Big Night Media Studios at the Boston TD Garden. This is the Word on the Street podcast, where it's all things AE.
I'm Mark Goodale, he's Mick Morrissey, and you are watching Morrissey Goodale's Word on the Street podcast. Mick, welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Good to see you again.
Good to be here again with you.
It's after Valentine's Day, no chocolates, no flowers, no nothing.
I've got the bottle of champagne chilling for later on.
Yeah, I'll hold my breath. It's great to have Bob Belitz with us today. Bob is president and CEO of Tighe Bond, one of the truly standout employee-owned engineering and environmental consulting firms in New England, ranked number 202 on ENR's top 500 list. The firm is known for the kind of work that keeps communities running, including water, transportation, environmental, and infrastructure projects. Among them, Bob, welcome to the streets. Great to see you.
Mark, Mick, it's my honor to join you guys today, and congratulations on being in this studio here. We're going to talk about that a little bit, maybe before we get into some of the Tighe Bond stuff.
Oh, interesting. No, it's good to have you, Bob.
You know, it's let's just get this out in the open, Bob. You're in the home of the Boston Bruins and Boston Celtics, as you know. You live in Massachusetts, yet you are a New York sports fan. What happened to you?
Well, nothing's happened to me, but let me tell you what almost happened as part of my coming here in person when you said, hey, we've got this studio and it's adjacent to the garden.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is terrific. I'd love to do that. So I started driving from my home in Connecticut into New York, right? Because Madison Square Garden is the garden, right, guys?
Yeah.
But
you
no,
made it here quickly. That was impressive.
Yes. Turned around very quickly. But no, it's great to be here, and it looks like a fabulous venue for you to continue the amazing podcast.
Yeah, we've been having fun with it.
Yeah,
and,
we're thrilled you're here with us, Bob.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, Bob, Mick and I were talking about this before you arrived, actually. You were probably still in New York City looking for the garden.
On the Sawmill Park.
That's right. That's right. But you come from a different track. You're coming into leadership from a different lane than pure project delivery. Can you talk about that a little bit, your background?
Yeah, I'd love to. So about 10 or 11 years ago, when I joined Tighe Bond, I was the company's first ever chief financial officer. Yeah. So the company had evolved to a point where my predecessor thought we needed to add that to the mix. So yeah, my background is financial, spent about a dozen years in public accounting, but that's really where I developed an affinity and a passion for the engineering, consulting, construction industry, and was able to parlay that into, some nice opportunities on the AEC side. And, when my predecessor, announced that he was going to retire, the board and the selection committee of Tighe Bond had the confidence to, entrust the future of our amazing firm in my hands, which is, it's just such an honor. So yeah, there's a few things that I'm sure we'll cover over the course of the discussion that were a big adjustment for me. And I've got a few others in my fraternity, if you will, sorority, who have come from the non-engineering side too.
It's interesting, Bob, right? So if you look at your peer group, let's talk about the ENR top 500 firms. 11% of the CEOs are non-architecture or engineering professionals, and most of those have a public accounting background. Very few have come from the legal perspective, or are formerly lawyers or general counsels. Of that 11%, most are formerly public accounting folks like yourself. And I know we're going to talk about this, about how well managed Tighe Bond is. And the resiliency of Tighe Bond over the years, and the outlook for Tighe Bond. But my observation, and I think Mark would share this with me, what's really interesting is when we have worked on strategy or other types of engagements with AE firms that are run by essentially folks who come from a public accounting background, when you hit the sweet spot there, it's a great thing. It's a great thing to have that perspective actually in the executive suite, driving the firm forward.
Thank you for saying that. One of the great things about the public accounting profession, especially in a large firm like I was in, was you just get exposed to so many different things, different personalities, different business models, different clients, different places to work. Sometimes they put you in the basement with all the cockroaches when you're doing the audit and consulting work too. But, as it relates to how that can translate for a firm like Tighe Bond, one of the things that I feel like I need to be really careful about is making sure, because of my background, that people don't think that my only motivation or drive for our strategic plan and everything else is around the financial goals. It's got to be that balanced scorecard kind of approach to the people and the clients and the technology and everything else that goes into running a firm like ours.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and Bob, seeing you in action when we worked together on the strategic plan several years ago, you're with some folks who have been in that, engineering role for a long, long time, in the management roles for a long, long time. But it didn't seem to me, and you were pretty new, I think, at that point, right?
That session that we worked on together was even before I officially took the role. It was the fall before I stepped into the role. It was the positioning. Yeah.
But even before you took that role, I never felt like you looked like you had something extra to prove. At least it didn't look like that on the outside, but it might have felt like that on the inside. Can you talk a little bit about the push and pull that you might have been feeling at that time?
Clearly, that was like an anxious kind of session for me. I think one of the biggest things I was worrying about was, making sure that we stayed on time and got to everything. Once I took a deep breath and got through that, it was really earning, the confidence of everybody in the room. And, that's why I talked to you and your team so much, in advance of that session to make sure that, we hit the mark. So I think I knew right away that because of the longevity of some of the great people that were in that session with us, that I had to do a combination of listening, but I also had to make sure that I put my imprint on that plan, because it was the one that we were going to develop as I stepped into the operational role in January of that year. So it was a tricky balance. I looked at the evolution of our plans over time, and I think we did a really nice job. The vision statement we adopted is still our vision today, and we promote that regularly throughout the firm. And, some of the growth that we'll talk about today also came out of that plan.
And Mick, I have to say, you and I have done tons and tons of strategy sessions over the years, and you guys had a very cool activity. And I don't know if you remember it.
I totally remember it. My wife and I went looking for venues where we could do that. Do you want to tell Mick and the audience, or do I get to do that?
Fire away.
So, we thought one of the, great things we could do to build that camaraderie, which was one of the pieces of feedback that you got out of your stakeholder interviews, the internal ones. So we brought in a chef, a school that teaches you how to cook. Yeah. So we broke up into 4 teams, and one person did the appetizer, et cetera, through the dessert. And after you did that, you got to eat the food. I think you came in to eat. I don't know if you cooked because you were busy with the notes.
We were busy with the notes. That was the excuse. I can make a bowl of cereal, probably, sometimes, but it would have gone from you got to eat it to you had to eat it if I was there. It would have been a different situation. But I just thought that was
that's
clever.
A great way, And
I peeked in and I just saw you knit it together in a different way when you're in that situation. Nobody's the expert, and it just drops everybody's sort of defensive posture or whatever, and it really just energized the group throughout the session. So I thought that was really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, we had a good time with that.
You step into the CEO role, Bob, and you inherit a playbook from some folks who were really successful in that role. Over time, how did you decide what to protect and what to modernize without sort of breaking what already worked?
It's kind of interesting. The strategic planning session we just talked about a second ago, I went back and looked at some of the notes, and you went around the room to ask people what they wanted to get out of it. And my comment, you let me go first, which was nice, was, the biggest challenge for me is holding on to all the things that Tighe Bond has done so well in its 100-year plus history, but also making sure that the firm pivots and can take itself to the next level. So we've done a lot of things in the marketplace. If you look at the expansion of the firm in terms of geography and services, a lot of firms, including a lot of people, including some of our employees, knew Tighe Bond as a firm that had like one or two offices, right, in Western Massachusetts, and now we have 15, soon to be 16, and over 600 people. So we've done that from a geographic perspective. We've also continued to evolve the services that we can provide to clients. So that's been good. So in the marketplace, we're expanding internally. Of course, we've had to keep up with that growth by reorganizing the way we run the business and the services, the way we run the company. And then, also really important, though, is holding on to things that people value. We have a number of people who have worked at the firm for a long time. The social culture of Tighe Bond is one of the things that we think attracted people to the firm and keeps them with us. So, for example, I'll give it to you real quick. We've got an annual event that we have every September. We've done it every year except for the pandemic year. It's called the Lobster Fest. All the employees come to our Westfield office, and the entire event, from the setup to the cooking to the cleaning to the serving, is done by all of the leadership, the vice president group of the firm. So textbook example of servant leadership. Yeah. As big as we get, we are going to do our absolute best to hold on to something like that. That's what people value.
I was kind of thinking about the culture and how it's grown even stronger through the growth, and you've knitted the fabric together so well. And Mick, we've seen so many firms, and there are some that it's there. It's a company, and it's there. And there are some that have a real presence and a culture and a history,
a lifeblood flowing through them. Right?
And it's almost palpable. And I do think, and I've been in, Mick has too, close to 1,000 firms, if not more. We can tell when we're in one of those. Yeah. And I could tell I was in one of those right away when we started working with you. So,
and then also in the context of what you're holding on to and preserving, and then what's new. Right. I think you got something going on recently in terms of your branding and your logo. Would that be right?
We do. I wasn't sure who was going to get us to that point of entry, but yes, one of the other things we've done externally just at the beginning of 2026 was a brand refresh. Yeah. So this is something that the company had not done in some time. I think it was a terrific opportunity for us to showcase what we've adopted as our tagline, which is partnership with purpose.
Okay, that's right.
So what that does is really pay homage to all the things we're starting to talk about here, the history of the firm, the reliability, the client service, and everything that goes with the quality of the organization, but also showing that we're continuing to evolve in the marketplace. And in light of that, I do have a little bit of a handout for you.
Now, never turn down a handout, Mark, right?
Never.
No. Now, Mick
separates us from the animal.
I've watched all of the previous podcasts. Yes. Amazing. I'm not sure I've seen you wear a hat,
right?
But I know that golf season isn't that far away.
It's very true.
It's 10 degrees here today. So for both you and Mark,
fantastic!
All the time.
Fantastic, Mark.
Yes, here's a Tighe Bond hat with our new brand on it there. I hope you enjoy
it's a lovely blue.
I can put that right.
Yeah, it's a lovely blue.
Yeah, we now have two colors in there, the blue and the orange, and we're very proud of that. And it's an opportunity.
I only thought you looked good in a cowboy hat.
Yeah,
but a cap is good.
No, this is great, Bob. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. But it does speak to what you and your team are doing, right? Continuing to take something that is really good and making it better.
Go on.
I mean, that's our goal. I mean, when you think about, how people perceive us in the marketplace, we still we're running. There's some challenges with that, right, Mick? Where, if we've done water work historically in one geography and now we have this flourishing transportation practice, it's going to take us some time and some effort to, make sure people know the depth of the services that we provide. And the same thing when we enter into the new geographies. But, when we talk about growth, we're going to say that creates opportunity for people.
And lots of firms that we talk with about growth, they'll talk about growth like it's automatically good. So do you have a personal filter for smart growth versus future growth that's going to cause some pain? How do you distinguish?
It's always helpful for me to go back to what we do during the strategic planning process, right? That's the starting point for our growth goals and our growth initiatives. And over the course of the last, say, 7 to 8 years, now the market has helped us too, right? There's been a tremendous, amount of tailwinds for growth. But it was really important to explain to our folks that this growth was not only good for them as employee owners of the business, but was also to keep pace with what was going on in the market and the competition. We look at a ton of benchmarking data all the time, and you see that average annual growth rate was going from high single digits to low single, to double digits and beyond, and that's where we've been. So for me, it's obviously making sure we don't break all of the things that we're known for, like the quality and the client service.
Right.
I think we've done a nice job in pushing ourselves in our internal systems to support that growth, and then we'll sprinkle in some acquisitions as well to help with that.
On the topic of acquisitions and growth, so I look at Tighe Bond. So you were founded in Western Mass.
Founded in Western Mass, 1911.
1911.
Yes.
And so if I look at some of your recent growth, let's say over the last decade or so, you have an opportunity. You're 600 people in New England.
Correct.
Right?
You don't have to get on an airplane to go to any of our offices. I don't know how many firms can
You
say
could,
that.
but
You could. I'm not sure where you would fly from. But
that's where I wanted to get to with this, right? So you're not unique. There are certain other firms that have comparable numbers of folks or employees in New England. But you're primarily a New England, New York type of firm, and you have 600 people, which is really a remarkable achievement starting in Western Mass. And I think it allows you to play to your strengths, because when you look at growth, you can make an acquisition on Cape Cod, you can make an acquisition in New Hampshire, and these are meaningful acquisitions in the context of where Tighe Bond wants to go. But they're acquisitions that maybe some of your competitors at the national or up and down the East Coast wouldn't even consider. But by virtue of the room that you have to run, playing to your strengths, you can do that, right? And it'll make sense for your people.
I think when we go to talk to acquisition candidates about why Tighe Bond, what you just said, Mick, is certainly one of them. The ability to partner up with existing resources in their geographies to grow their portfolio of services and client base there, which is terrific. And then also, if you combine that with the fact that, a lot of the firms, around here, and certainly all the ones that we're talking to, have that employee ownership, that New England kind of feel to them that's relatable, and it helps them feel like they won't have, it'll be an adjustment, of course, but it won't be this, oh my goodness, what happened here?
Right. I know we've talked in the past just about in terms of best practices from an acquisition perspective. Tighe Bond may not be the most prolific of acquirers in terms of making multiple acquisitions every year or so, but I've talked with you about the best practices that you have put in place with your acquisitions and how they have facilitated integration of those acquisitions.
We just think it's really important to learn. We did a couple of acquisitions one in the early 2000s, one in the early 2010s to give us expanded geographic presence down in Fairfield County, Connecticut and New Hampshire. And then coming out of the subsequent strategic plan that we did back in 2020 or so, we said, okay, the company's really capitalized. Here comes a little bit of that financial jargon. Not too much, right?
Yeah. No, hit us with it. Come on. Yeah.
We've got a really healthy balance sheet. We want to put that capital to work for our employees, so maybe we could, start to think a little bit more about acquisitions in our growth strategy. And since then, we've done 5, so about 1 per year, ranging from 4 up to 40 folks. And then after a couple of them, we said, okay, let's take a step back. What have we learned, especially from the integration process? And let's do a little bit of a diagnostic on what we can do differently and better going forward. And that's the conversation that
one thing that you learned that you wanted to improve. Can you share that with us?
I would say it sounds basic maybe to this audience, but I can't stress how paramount it is for you to make sure you put somebody intentionally in the office of the acquired firm. And I know that person is going to be busy in the existing organization, but reallocate his or her time commitment so they could be there, because the CEO and the CHRO and everybody can go for the announcement part, but that team is going to want to talk to one of their peers, and that peer can be sitting right there versus in the
hugely important.
So that's probably the biggest one.
Thanks for that.
But doing it more, especially if we ever did a bigger one with more than multi-offices.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Bob. Yeah.
Now, Bob, when firms scale, at least in our experience, the biggest risks aren't always the most dramatic risks. They tend to be gradual. Can you think of a slow creep risk that you think leaders should watch out for as these companies grow, or as your company grows?
I can think of 2, Mark. One of them is more a risk for the organization as a whole, and the other is more a risk for the leader of the organization. So for the organization as a whole, especially a firm like Tighe Bond, who's such a multidisciplinary organization, watch out for silo creation as you grow as a company. You want to maintain that one company feel. You want to make sure that the project teams are made out of the best people for that project, regardless of which of your business lines or offices that they reside in. So I think we've done a nice job with that. So that's what I would advise.
It's interesting you say that, because I know that's a big part of Mark's work these days is driving out those silos. Because once you get to a certain size, they manifest themselves despite the best intentions.
Yeah, and it's the communication gaps between the groups that can be the real nemesis there, as opposed to the silos themselves. But you can see that. You can see it happening. Sorry, Bob.
Yeah, no, and then just the other part of the answer would be more geared towards the individuals, the leadership there as the firm grows. I think it's just crucial that you learn to let go, if you will, empower, delegate, trust. Lots of thought about responsible autonomy. That was a phrase, right? If you put a quarter in the jar every time when we did the session, we all would have been very wealthy. But, whatever you call it, I think that is absolutely essential to get stuff done as the firm grows.
Yeah. So, Bob, 600 people, New England, right?
Right.
Okay.
And New York, right? New York's New England.
Okay, New England and New York, right? But we're northeast, we're top right-hand corner of the country, right?
We're all cranky people.
I come in, I'm your business valuation guy. I'm doing the ESOP valuation. I say to you, you need to diversify, young man, right? Because if you're consolidated in New England and suddenly New England goes south, then what are we going to do? So are there discussions ever amongst the leadership team or throughout the firm about, hey, why don't we grow beyond New England? Or is there a future beyond New England for us at Tighe Bond?
Tricky question, Nick, but a really good one. Something that we do think about, certainly at the senior levels of the firm. We do our strategic planning exercise every 2 years, where we'll get a lot of input from across the organization, which will culminate in a workshop with some of the leaders. We talked a little bit about it last time and said, hey, we feel like there's still enough room for us to grow in the Northeast, which is, a good use of our employee capital and still has a lot of opportunities for client and staff growth. So we did the new office in New York. We'll do another one in New Hampshire. Yeah. I really think when we do the strategic planning again this coming year, we'll talk about that again. And I think one of the things that I'm going to do, even to a higher degree this year, is make sure we get some perspective from the next group of up-and-coming leaders in the firm. Because I imagine that's not a short thing, right? Unless maybe you go buy a firm somewhere and you get instant presence there. But, how willing is that next group of leaders going to be to carry that strategic thought process through? Because people have not lived it at Tighe Bond, at least. Now we've got a lot of people from outside the firm who have, of course, me included. Yeah,
so it's interesting. I think, Mark, when I look at Tighe Bond, right, Northeast, if we look at all the data and feedback we get from your peer group and the national firms, the bigger firms, when they talk about growth, they're never really targeting major investments in the Northeast from a geographic perspective or a infrastructure perspective. There's lots of talk about Texas, lots of talk about the Southeast. And I think, so when we talk about strategy with clients, we talk about where's everybody going and then where are the opportunities that are elsewhere. And again, I come back to that being, almost a superpower for you or a secret sauce for Tighe Bond, right? Because you know what's happening in New England. Even though there may be population changes and migration, there's still so much work in terms of rehab and development. But you got to really know the market, right? And New England is not one market. Maine is really different than New Hampshire, and it's really different than New York, right?
I'm smiling when you use the term secret sauce. One of our first external board members, which, by the way, was another big change the company made around the time that I joined the firm and we started to grow, was he said, make sure you stay true to Tighe Bond's secret sauce. And it's what you described, Mick, and it's also the client base that we were working for as well. 2/3 to 3/4 of our work comes from state and local government. So if you combine that with the New England presence, you need people who are really entrenched, embedded, connected to the communities where they work and live. And that is part of the, feedback and messaging coming out of the rebrand. There.
So let's talk about those people, because recruiting is one thing, but once folks have actually stayed a while and they've proven themselves and they have options, what do you think makes people stay?
We do new hire orientations about 2 months after people join the firm. So this is not, where do you find something on SharePoint, or where's the, ladies' room or the men's room. This is really to get an initial read on people's experience with the company. And probably the biggest thing that we hear, which I think perpetuates itself when people have been here a long time, is interesting, meaningful kinds of projects. We do a lot of different kind of project work, and the way our systems are set up and our structure is that people work together on these projects. So I think that's one thing that really keeps people attracted to the firm. And the other, I sort of alluded to it earlier in the conversation, is really just the culture. Everybody says how friendly, how welcoming the people are within the organization, even at the senior level. If you'll allow me just to talk about myself for 1 second here, people go out of their way to say, I think it's great that you address everybody by name and people and you still go to all the offices, 3 to 4 times a year on a structured basis. So they appreciate that. I don't want to call it small company
and you
feel,
even get the names right most of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, one of the young guys from one of the acquired companies looked at me and he caught me off guard in one of the sessions we had. He's like, "What percentage are you in terms of knowing everybody's name? Are you over 90%?" Yeah.
What's your
I thought he
batting
was talking
average?
about my free throw percentage. But, yeah,
Same thing.
So
Same
yes,
thing.
it's nice that people notice. It makes a difference. It makes them, feel welcome.
Yeah. So, this mid-level talent thing, Bob, it's the industry bottleneck, and it has been for some time. Is there a move you can think of that you think firms should make to rebuild that middle layer faster without burning people out? I mean, that's a tough needle to thread.
Yeah, that's a tough needle to thread because, if those are your best people and they are continuing to excel in the organization, they're going to get stuff piled onto them, right? Whether that's people management or project management or client management or corporate initiatives or whatever the case may be. That being said, I think the best way to engage that group and keep them going is through giving them meaningful leadership opportunities and continued opportunities to, have an impact on the firm. I think back, we talked about me coming up through the finance firm, so I'll give you a little anecdote here. Some of the folks that I hired right after I started, were on the billing or the general ledger accounting side of the organization. And we looked at each other and said, what are we going to do here? 5 years from now, the people are going to get bored. And my answer was, if we continue to evolve and the firm grows, there'll be more interesting projects to do. And now look, there's folks working on acquisitions. They're working on, business operation strategy plans. And, they're all the way up into our stock ownership program now, 8 or 9 years later. And there's lots of examples like that. So giving people meaningful career opportunities, I think, increases the the likelihood that they'll be able to stay. And it's a lot of work, like you said, to thread that needle but not burn out. That's a challenge. We hear it all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's a great point you make, and to have that kind of trajectory in your career, it's the new responsibilities you take on is one thing, and then it's what you're letting go. As well. And that can stop you dead in your tracks if you're not willing to let some things go.
We're trying. One of the areas I think, for a growing firm that's got a seller-doer history, and that's one of the main contributors to our success over the years is, how do you start to separate some of those things? So when I alluded to making organizational changes, in response to our growth, we've now created technical pillars within each of our business lines. And yes, those folks are still involved in project delivery and probably serving as, a PM on certain, but that's not their primary responsibility.
Not their calling at this point.
Right.
Right.
And that's a journey that hopefully we'll continue to be on, because that will allow us to, attract and retain those folks just as easily as the others.
How many folks are in the office? How many days a week? How's that? There was in the news a while back something about a pandemic or something. How did that? Are you back to 100% of the folks in 100% of the time, or how's it working?
Is any firm in our industry 100%?
It varies by region, Bob. It varies by region. Yeah.
Okay. How about New England? Probably not.
You're about it's amazing. New England's around 50%.
We were pretty, definitive early on, obviously once all of the safety precautions, had started to be lifted, that we were moving, to a hybrid work model.
Yeah.
And for us, that means 3 days, in the office with clients at job sites, whatever the case may be, and 2 days remote.
Yeah.
We don't dictate which days those are. We trust people that they'll get the job done, and the results will speak for themselves. And I'll tell you something that has evolved. I know a lot of other companies have done it, and admittedly, I resisted it at first. These in-office collaboration days.
Yeah.
A lot of firms are going. I was like, why do we need that? Can't we already have a 3 and a 2?
Yeah.
Let's let people do it. And I tend to go into the office pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, but we're going to probably give that a shot this year as we work through
Sure.
2026, and we'll spend a few extra dollars on bagels or pizza or whatever the case may be, but it will get more people collaborating, because obviously that's such a huge part of the development of our staff.
It's one thing if you've been in an office environment and you're removed from it, you can adapt. You can kind of think about you can normalize things, but when you just don't have that experience to begin with, that can be pretty tough. So I think what you talk about is very important, and I think it's about experimenting and have an expectation for what you're looking for, and then tweak your way there.
I will tell you that, you're talking about experimenting, and I think one of the things that I've learned in this job, it's not really related to any specific question you asked me, but is, to say it's okay to try something, and then if it doesn't work, maybe the most important thing is to be able to acknowledge that it didn't and say, hey, we thought this could work, but in our culture, it wasn't the best thing.
Yeah.
And there's another thing that we can try to do to meet the objective. So I'm proud that we've done a few of those things.
And the things are incidental. It's the outcome that you're looking for, and have a healthy relationship with wrongness. It's not the bed bug of intellect. It's how you get things right eventually. So you can't make too many mistakes. You're going to drive the company into the ground. But it's all trial and error. That's how cognitive learning works. That's not our rule. That's just how the human brain works. I want to shift us a little bit here, if we could, and talk about some innovation and market shifts that we're seeing. Obviously, lots of talk about AI. Do you see any practical near-term use of technology that you think is going to quietly separate firms over the next couple of years?
I think this question has to be answered with the 2 letters of AI in it, right? Otherwise, there's no backing behind it. But I think one of the things that will differentiate firms is the ability to not lose that connectivity through trust and relationships and communication, but to be able to demonstrate that the use of the AI technology is really an enabler for us to be able, to provide, trusted advice to our clients. So we've made a significant investment in the technology. It's something that's advanced very quickly within our firm, and the demand and the appetite for it is insatiable. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you do a training class or a webinar, and it's on something that people may not be that juiced about, and you're lucky if you can get 20 people to show up to a brown bag. Yeah. We did one on the AI once we started procuring and partnering with the ChatGPT licenses. There were almost 200 people on it. People there's so many use cases for it, and we're going to just keep going on that mission.
We've got like 200 CEOs and investors coming to our Southeast M&A and Business Symposium in Miami next month. We asked them about how they're using AI. 84% of them are using it in their business. That's up from 75% last year, 50% the year before. Rapid deployment of AI. About 1/5 of them are using it for governance, and they're developing custom AI tools for internal use. 17% are using it for marketing and business development. A couple of years ago, that was the only use really for it, and it's changed completely. 16% are using it for enterprise operations and administrative efficiency. How do you use it in your daily work, Bob?
We are using it across the organization. So the 2 functions, on the overall operations that are probably using it the most are the marketing and business development and our contract operations group. We've also done some things on the, on the human resource side of things. But what we're really starting to see emerge, where the value is, or the use cases, through our technical resources, using it to, produce proposals on a more timely basis and help with report writing and other deliverables. But we are being really careful to make sure that folks understand, that does not take the place of
got to know the math before you use the calculator, right?
The expertise that we're expected to deliver.
I don't know if you're seeing this, Bob, but I'm seeing it, and it's counterintuitive, and it's the folks who are in college now, about to come out into the working world, are the ones who are, they're not huge AI supporters. I can't say that by and large, but I know plenty of examples of it. And I just wonder if these kids are just getting out, ready to go into the world, and they feel like they're going to be replaced immediately. And I think there's a real concern with some of the young folks in school and just coming out of school. They've been trained not to use it through their classes so the teachers can see and the professors can see what they're producing. And I just wonder if there's going to be a little bit of resistance. And I don't know if you're seeing any of that with anybody in your family or anybody professionally, but I'm seeing it.
I've got 2 kids. One of them is in the teaching realm, as in the special education. So that's a job that's good for in person. And another one's working for a professional sports team. I know, Mick, you're a big soccer guy. New soccer team coming to Boston area, the Boston Legacy.
Yes,
women's professional soccer.
Yes, that's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a great addition to the city.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of energy there. So that's what I experience in my own household. But being a pretty avid reader of what's going on in the world, you do see, the statistics for the larger organizations and how many of the jobs are getting replaced by AI. I'm not sure I've seen that within Tighe Bond, Mark, to your specific question. I think people look at it as, an opportunity to really get better at their job. And I think we've been pretty purposeful about saying that, this, again, does not replace what you do. This makes it better, makes it more efficient. And people seem to be adopting that. Related, we are trying to get the best ideas from young people in all of these areas. We've got a digital project delivery task force that's made up of different disciplines from across the organization, and the scope and purview of what they've been asked to work on over the course of the last year or two has been the use of artificial intelligence and carrying that through the organization.
Are you concerned at all that clients will stop paying for deliverables that they see as process versus value? You didn't really need to work at that. It's all AI.
I think it's really essential that we continue to demonstrate the value that we are bringing to clients, regardless of how that happened. I do think, and I don't have the answer for this yet, I think there'll be some evolution in the near future as to how, the pricing model works for the use of technology. We're starting to see that in, some contract RFPs and disclosure requirements. So I definitely think it's something to keep an eye on. But I think the companies that will be, successful in still being able to show their value in getting clients, to compensate us commensurate for that are the ones that, maintain that trust, relationship building, communication, all the things that
you
go
keep
with
coming back to that word trust, Bob. It's very important.
I just think that is, it for me coming into the role there, I thought that was the most important thing. And, from a client perspective, when you think about, reliability and everything else that goes with delivery, that's a big word, Mick.
So Mick, it's time for your favorite.
Boy, that went quickly.
It did go quickly. But it's time now for Word to the Wise. I know his favorite part of the pod. Favorite part, where we ask our guest Bob for some wise words. So, what's one sentence you wish more AE leaders had the courage to say out loud in meetings? Speaking of trust and reliable commitments and so forth, what's one sentence?
Just one sentence, huh, guys? Okay. How about this? That's a great idea. Let me just socialize that with a few other folks within the organization to make sure we're thinking of everything we need to do to make this successful.
Wow.
Wow.
That seems like a really good one.
You nailed it.
Yeah, I think you should put that in your pocket.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit more about that before we break? Because that's really intriguing. Why is that so important?
I just think in order to get the buy-in that you're looking for and to get people to come along with you, it's really helpful to talk to folks who are living the experience every day. And, as connected as our leadership team is to the business, there are 600 plus other employee owners out there. And a lot of them, have some really good perspective that we can, learn from and make the decisions together.
And it's respect, it's trust, it's all those things we talked
Starting
about,
to
right?
quote all of Tighe Bond's core values there. I appreciate that.
Bring it all back home.
Yes.
Well, Bob, it's great seeing you. It's great to know that you will soon be rooting for a Massachusetts-based team.
Yes.
A new one coming to the city.
Yeah.
And really, thanks for joining us today. It's been great. And thanks to our viewers, as always. Please like and subscribe. And we hope to see you next time on the street.